You are now listening to the Soul and Wonder Podcast, episode 31, Navigating Self-Awareness and Beliefs with JP Sears.
Welcome to the Soul and Wonder Podcast, where the conduits of the body, depths of the mind, and atlas of the soul are explored with devotion. Through cultural exchange, Christopher and Sara and their guests will deliver sacred wisdom from around the globe, uncovering the hidden gems of conscious living and holistic healing, all to empower you on your journey of self-discovery. And now, here are your hosts, Christopher and Sara.
Welcome to the Soul and Wonder Podcast, you lovely human beings. We are your hosts, Sara and
Christopher. What is up, everybody?
Happy to have you here, as usual, and I think you're really going to like this interview we just had with JP Sears.
Yeah, JP's a great guy. Really had an awesome conversation, and he's just very down-to-earth, genuine, sincere, but also brings a little bit of a comedic twist, which is really refreshing.
In fact, most of you probably know who he is based off of his ultra-spiritual comedy series on YouTube. Very, very funny. Highly recommend it.
Definitely.
Check it out. So let's give you a little bit of rundown on JP. JP is an emotional healing coach, YouTuber, author, international teacher, speaker at events, world traveler, and curious student of life. His work empowers people to live more meaningful lives, and he's also the author of How to Be Ultra Spiritual. Great book. Get it. Highly recommend it. He is very active with his online videos where he encourages healing and growth through his humorous and entertainingly informative videos, as I'd mentioned before, his ultra spiritual comedy series, which has accumulated over 100 million views. That's a lot. But before we get into this juicy conversation with JP all about life, spirituality, this new age thing that we got going on, and consciousness, everything, emotional healing, everything.
It's loaded.
It's loaded. We want you to go to our website and download our Fresh Start ebook.
Yeah.
It's free.
It's a good one. And, you know, I know it's really hard for some people, and it's very overwhelming for a lot of people to navigate this world of health and wellness. And I know there's so many people that come to us and say, man, I really want to get healthy, but I just don't know where to start. We keep it simple. We want to make sure that it's simple enough for you to follow. It's a good jump off point for you. And that we do have other freebies on the website you can check out. But start with that, see how you feel. And again, please
reach out.
Contact us. Send us an
know.
email. Any questions you have. And we'd be happy to answer them. We will be starting a new YouTube series coming up here soon. We're going to be doing more educational videos on health and wellness, but also giving you some more transparency moments into Sara and I's life.
Yeah, so you can see what goes on behind the scenes. So, once again, enjoy this interview. Stay tuned to the end to get your health tip of the episode, which is on
Go to Cola.
Ooh.
Fancy, huh?
Sounds fancy.
All right, we'll see you guys at the end.
Enjoy. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, now with JP Sears. JP, thanks for coming on the show.
Yay! Well, I appreciate you guys having me. I'm super happy to be here with you guys.
You sound super happy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's a wonderful facade that I wear, and I think the facade, it exudes happiness very well because I actually am happy, I think, based on what I can tell.
That Costa Rican air is getting to your head.
Yeah, it really does have a beautiful way of melting away the daily pressure I normally put on myself that is so unnecessary, but I tend to just somehow fall into that trap naturally.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know if it's the heat of Costa Rica that melts that away, the vibration of the place, I don't know, but it's feels good to be here.
Now, are you in the rainforest or are you by the ocean?
Yeah, both, kind of. So it's very jungle-like environment and right on the ocean in Manuel Antonio.
Love that place. I lived there for about a month. Not at
you
Manuel.
did?
Yeah, I was studying Spanish abroad in college, and we went to Manuel Antonio for just a weekend, and it was beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. Some of the most beautiful beaches I've ever seen, and I love lush landscapes, like the hills, the mountains, the jungle, the green. It feeds me.
Can't beat it.
Oh, yeah. It makes us feel alive. All the fruit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, JP, I got to bring this up as the icebreaker in this interview.
I'm already afraid.
Drum roll.
So this is how we came across your person, your being, was when a vegan friend of mine posted your If Meat Eaters Acted Like Vegans video from your Ultra Spiritual Life series on your YouTube channel on my Facebook page. Now, first, listeners, if you have yet to see this hilarious video, I highly recommend pausing this podcast episode, scooting on over to YouTube, type that in, If Meat Eaters Acted Like Vegans, and give it a listen and join us. So, I am a fellow vegan, and with my friend, of course, and my husband is as well, and when we watched the video, immediately I was confused. I was like, wait a minute, this guy, I was like, this guy's got to be vegan. Oh, wait, no, he's not vegan. He's definitely not vegan. Oh, he's so making fun of meat eaters. Wait a minute. He's so making fun of vegans. And then I loved it because I realized, at least my interpretation, which is open for discussion, but I realized that there was your ability to poke fun at both sides of the story was really shining this light on the divide between the two groups. And I saw that divide with the comment sections of meat eaters.
Those comments, man.
It was a mutiny in that comment section for sure.
You started World War III with your YouTube video, but it was, meat eaters were bashing the vegans, and vegans were bashing the meat eaters, and both sides seemed to think that only the vegans were being targeted. And I thought that was funny because I was like, wait a minute, because I see some jokes here for both sides, and that immediately. I really respected that, and so I started watching more of your ultra spiritual videos, of course, laughing my ass off, and I came across your website after that, and I must say that I was very surprised because the way that I had found out who you were was through your ultra spiritual content. Mm-hmm. And your ultra spiritual content is known to be satirical and humorous, but you also have this sincere, down-to-earth side of you as well as an emotional healing coach. And that was a really pleasant surprise. So I just kind of wanted to open up with that, like how we discovered you and, when did you start creating these funny videos, by the way?
Yeah, well, thank you for the framework of how you guys discovered me. I love that. And I about 2.5 years ago is when I started creating the comedy videos.
Okay. And you've been an emotional healing coach for quite some time.
Yeah, that's been rolling along for about 15 years or so. And ultimately, what I view as the purpose of any of my work, whether it's a sincere, heartfelt one-on-one session with a client, or it's a comedy video, the purpose of my work is to, in my opinion, the heart and soul of my work is to help people heal and live more meaningful lives. And I think self-awareness is one of those ingredients. And I like to look at my videos as like the deeper underlying intention is to create more self-awareness. Shine a light on some of the hiding spots where we lose ourselves, where we become unself-aware, where, we might be swallowed up by our own dogma, our own judgments, our own self-righteousness. And I like to shine the light on that so that we can see the person living beneath these human conditions of self-righteousness and judgment. And, I think when now I'm getting into a dissertation, but I think when we judgmental and self-righteous, as I think all people are. The question is, how do we express it? But when we misdirect it, when we repress it, then chaos happens. Then I think we can lose ourselves. Then we can become what would appear to be the self-righteous vegan or the self-righteous meat eater. So a video like that, it's not about vegans. It's not about meat eaters. It's about shining the light on self-righteous, indignant behavior that is part of the human condition. So like my girlfriend, she's a vegan, and I'm like, yay, vegan. But also, I don't care if she's a vegan. I love her for being her. And if someone, be it vegan or meat eater, if someone's acting self-righteous, that's not anything to do with being a vegan or nothing to do with being a meat eater. It's having to do with you being self-righteous. And I think when we misdirect it and try to hide behind an altruistic hiding spot, like, oh, I'm a vegan and that's what I'm being, or I'm spiritual, that's what I'm being. It's like, no. You might have spiritual practices. You might have a vegan eating practice. But if you are being self-righteous, we need to take a look at that and become transparent and vulnerable with it and more authentic with it, rather than trying to hide it behind noble-looking hiding spots that ultimately cause a lot of misdirected expression of that human psychological energy. So long story short, videos like that, my intention is to help people become more self-aware of what they're in denial of.
I like that a lot, and I think it's so important to add that spice of humor to it, because you know what, we're floating on this tiny little rock through a galaxy. Come on, let's get a hold of ourselves for a second.
Yeah.
Well, and you bring up such a good point, because it's so easy for every single one of us to get wrapped up in that and to forget and to think, we become so passionate about the things that we hold true to our hearts and hold dear to us that there comes a point where you just kind of like go down the wormhole, and it's hard to look at things from an objective perspective, especially when it comes to yourself. And, Chris and I were all about personal development. We're the mirror for each other to look at the weaknesses and strengths within ourselves, and constantly challenging each other to grow. Well, actually challenging us within ourselves to grow, not even challenging each other, if that makes sense. And
sure,
it's such a process that never stops. And I think when people find these dogmas or beliefs that they cling to so tightly, they forget that they're still a fluid creature that changes and morphs. And I don't know, I think that's a really refreshing perspective that you bring to the table.
Yeah, I love what you said. I think the growth, how much growth we have to do is it's limitless. And I apologize for the dogs barking. I guess it's just nature doing its thing.
Invite them on the podcast.
Our dogs will probably start barking too at some point.
But if we have really infinite growth to encounter, or potential to encounter, sometimes we forget that infinity is bigger than we think it is. And I think having the kind of the old Zen beginner's mindset with everything is a good idea. And I think at least I need reminders of that, because we can say, yeah, it makes a lot of sense that it's a journey, not a destination. But then we live as though it's a destination. Mm-hmm. We kind of like, yeah, I'm spiritual. So it's like, yeah, I'm kind of done. I'm spiritual. I'm a vegan. I'm done. I'm yogi. I'm done. I'm a CrossFitter. I'm done. But to realize, like, yeah, no matter where we've arrived to, we're still a beginner. And we need to humble ourselves into that. So I think having someone call us out on our dogma that is really, in my opinion, psychological scar tissue that creates comfort but also restriction. Having someone call us out on that is very therapeutic, not necessarily comfortable, because it means we leave the cocoon of our comfort zone that's created from our psychological scar tissue that is our dogma. And how I go about that, if I can pretend I do such a thing, is using like the samurai sword of satire to help slice through that psychological scar tissue. I think the comedy sword of satire, especially satire, it's got a blade to it. Mm-hmm. It's got a sharp edge. It's not dulled slapstick comedy where you can have an IQ of 15 and like laugh, where it just, let's look at what's there but exaggerate it. But to me, satire is, let's look at the unseen that's there. Let's see what isn't seen but is there. So to me, there's a relative intelligence that's evoked in the viewer through satire. In other words, it's like an intelligence that causes us to see something about ourselves that's gone unseen for a while, but it's there. Hence, it gets revealed when we slice through the cocoon we've built through our dogma that covers it up.
And you're right, it's so uncomfortable, but it's so necessary.
Yeah, it's we're weird creatures. I think we become self-identified with a lot of things that we're not, and that might be a belief system, it might be a role, and when we hear something that's very therapeutic but not comfortable, but that's something that slices through what we're not, it can be very uncomfortable because it's like we're scared to death. You know, when you show me what I think I am, but I'm actually bigger than that, and I'm not the thing that I think I am, it's scary. It's like, wow, we're losing who we think we are. It's like we feel like we're dying, even though it's actually helping us be born into a deeper reality of ourself. But nonetheless, yeah, of course it's scary and uncomfortable to feel like we're dying when we lose identification with what we think we are.
And those uncomfortable moments, it's so crucial.
They're essential.
Yeah, to push those boundaries, to test yourself and re-examine. And we're all about, as soon as we get comfortable, I swear we only spend a few days in it. Next thing you know, we're uncomfortable.
Back to isolation and examining ourselves.
Yeah, and to me, that you guys have the equation for a successful, meaningful life. And, you know, successful, not at all just in terms of outer achievements. It's kind of like, I almost don't care if outer achievement is there, but inner fulfillment for me is the hugest part of success. So the equation that I heard you guys just spell out for a meaningful, successful life is seek discomfort. To me, that's the mantra of our self-realization instincts. Go towards discomfort. Whereas the mantra of our self-preservation instinct says avoid discomfort. And I think when we become a slave where we're just worshiping our self-preservation instinct that says move away from things that are uncomfortable, painful, or unknown, we'll potentially have a comfortable life for a while, but it'll feel like a very empty, shallow life after a while. But being the hero on our journey, where we are the archetypal warrior who we feel afraid at times, yet we go into the discomfort anyway, rather than being afraid to feel the fear of the discomfort, and therefore we avoid it. But so I think, like, if there could only be one ingredient for a successful life, I think it is embrace discomfort.
Couldn't agree with you more on that one.
I love it. And you know what? Going into the unknown, you know, it's scary. I was scared shitless many times. I've done this. And, you know, those are the times that I've personally grown the most and just felt so much achievement out of that. And, you know, Sarah and I always use the example, but we had met when we were in Africa serving in the Peace Corps and leaving a comfy corporate job, making thousands of dollars a year, going to school for a master's degree and climbing the corporate ladder. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but for myself, it wasn't fitting. And for me, I wasn't fulfilling my passion and letting my heart sing. So I decided to up and leave and sell everything and just move halfway across the world for 2 years. And it was the best decision I've ever made.
And you broke down crying in your little house in the little village.
Oh my God.
You had this realization that, like, oh my God, I have left everything comfortable.
Wow.
Physically and metaphorically, of course. But
yeah, that's amazing. And I like the realness of it where, yeah, you broke down crying. Of course it was hopefully horrendously scary and painful because that's how meaningful it is. So, you know, I think it's one thing to glorify embracing discomfort. And honestly, that's, I think, deservedly so. There's a lot of glory, freedom, growth, and a bliss that comes from embracing discomfort. And there's a reason why most people don't do it. It's because there's a lot of consequences. It means you're going to go through the dark forest for sure. So I love that realness that, you were in the dark forest, even though it was very medicinal for you.
Well, and I sat there, when I first got to my house, and I had 2 chairs and 1 table and a little, called jiko in Swahili, a little cook stove. And I sat there and looked in this empty house. I could hear my voice echo through this, like, concrete.
It was falling apart. Termites were infested in the ceiling.
And I probably cried my eyes out for like a good hour and a half, 2 hours. It's like, what the hell did I just do?
It's such a release, though, at the same time, and our listeners have heard this story, so we won't continue to elaborate, but you're an emotional coach, right? And you've been doing this for a long time. What got you interested in coaching emotional healing?
I needed a lot of emotional healing, and I was too arrogant to acknowledge that. So I projected my need for healing onto other people. So that meant I had the desire and the passion to start helping other people heal themselves, which was cool. That was like life tricking me into myself. It's like, okay, JP's too arrogant to acknowledge he needs help in healing. So let's let him think that he's passionate about helping other people, because that will be the gluten-free breadcrumb that gets him to the next breadcrumb, which is his own healing. So when I started working with and learning and studying from very wise people, because they were wise people, they realized you have to embody what you're trying to teach. You have to embody what you're trying to help other people do. So of course, our own healing was very much part of the learning curriculum. So once I got into that, it was very humbling. I'm just realizing, like, wow, I had zero idea how emotionally disconnected I've been for most of my life. Zero idea of how emotionally weak I've been. And I made up this story that I'm really strong emotionally because I never cry. But now I look at that, I'm like, wow, the reason why I didn't cry for 6 years is because I was not emotionally strong, but emotionally weak, disguised as invulnerable. I think invulnerability is incredibly weak. I think being vulnerable, being able to cry, like you have mentioned, Chris, is a beautiful sign of strength. It really is. I think it takes a lot of strength and a lot of courage to feel as weak as we do when we are broken down crying. So, long story short, I'm screwed up, and that's what got me interested into the realm of helping people help themselves.
Isn't that funny how that works? I got my life coaching certification with this amazing life coach. And shout out to Dr. Bronze. And one of the things he taught us in the beginning, he was like, you're going to learn so much about your own self through your clients. Just make sure you separate it until after the call. Because then you realize how much you learn from people going through their own emotional healing or, building their dreams, reaching their goals. And you really hit the nail on the head there. I have to say that I have that same mentality, like, oh yeah, I can help heal so many people, and then you just start to realize, like, wow, I am screwed up.
Yeah, there's no question. The more you know, the more you understand that you don't know. It's like the more I learn about myself, the more I come to know how much I don't know about myself. And it's very humbling. I don't think it needs to be shaming, like, oh, wow, there's so much about me that needs work. It's like, and that's great. Like, that's all potential. It really is. And, I love your perspective about your clients are wonderful teachers for you, and it's like separate until after the session. Man, I've been blessed to work with thousands of clients over the years, and when people ask me, like, oh, JP, where'd you learn my emotional coaching craft? certainly some of it has been through the hundreds of hours of like kind of classroom and practical training, but I mean, so much of it has been experiential, where my clients are there not only teaching me about the craft of coaching, but teaching me about me, where I don't care what their literal life experience is, at some level, be it literal or symbolic, I have had my version of their experience. And if I listen to what they say, if I listen deeply, I'll hear the story about me that this miraculous mirror has shown up to teach me. So it is just, I mean, such a privilege getting to work with people one-on-one. It's like the university of life education, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, it really proves the interdependent facet of humanity. We're not separate. We just aren't.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to touch on, going back to when we were talking about the emotions and not letting yourself come to the point of crying or breaking down. And this is something we had touched on in our last episode with one of an amazing woman, Costa, and talking about the societal pressures for men to have this tough guy facade and to not embrace the feminine side of his personality, because we are both feminine and masculine, but yet we as a society only drive to one area of being. As men, you need to be masculine, tough, and strong and not show any emotion at all. And I think that's completely wrong, and we need to flip that upside down.
Well, Chris, what I think I'm hearing you say is real men don't cry. Did I get the moral of your story correct?
That's it.
Yeah, amen, brother. I love what you said. I remember a time I was 5 years old, and my family, my mother, father, and sister, had just lived with my grandparents on my father's side for a year and a half, because our family's new house was being built. Construction took a while. My grandparents had the space that live with us, so we did for a year and a half. So the night we were moving out after a year and a half of living together, I went to hug my grandfather goodbye. I mean, like, we were moving 15 minutes away, but it was still like, wow, we're moving out, so this is like a big deal. So I went to hug him goodbye, and he didn't let me hug him. He pushed me away and said, real men don't hug, they shake hands. And like, holy crap, like, I believe that. That made an impression on me. I mean, God love my grandfather, rest in peace, so grateful for him, all those disclaimers, yet here's my actual unsugar-coated point. I think that was a very immature, wounded little boy psychology who's very afraid of intimacy and therefore had lived about 89 years of disconnection in order to protect himself from his fears of connection. So, to try to reinforce his protection mechanism of disconnection, that's what he taught my father. And that's what my father taught me. And that's what my grandfather taught me. Really, you boil it down, what I learned was a real man is someone who's disconnected. And it's like, holy cow. I believed that for a long time. And it cost me. So it's like, wow, there's a lot to unlearn there. There's a lot to then bring in and learn. And to me, I'm in a major phase of my life where connection is my priority. Connecting with my girlfriend, connecting with the people who matter most is my priority. And one of the reasons why it's a priority is because there's a lot of richness of life that comes through connection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm learning it for the first time. That's one of the reasons why I've got to prioritize it. Like, I don't know how to do it. So
and
I've got to learn it.
How fortunate to break that cycle, too. If you were to procreate, which I don't know if you have or haven't.
Such a sterile term, procreate. You mean have sex and then have a child accidentally or on purpose?
You covered it there. If at least you have that that leg up where you can say, I'm not going to continue this cycle because I've learned it, I'm learning it, and will continue to learn it within myself. and not pass that limiting belief onto your own children.
Well, the thing is, too, children they absorb everything. They're very vulnerable, and especially at that age, they're going to be, looking up to your grandfather, your mother, your father, your teachers, your friends, whatever. And these are things that when things are told to us and certain information is delivered to us, we have to be very careful on how that information is delivered to our children, because, again, they will absorb this information and take this to heart and bury this within their subconscious.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, I don't have children yet. However, being around children and having allegedly been one myself at some point, I think where children learn the least is when we're telling them lessons. But I think when children learn the most is when they witness our embodied actions.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So it's one thing to preach to the children, connection and love is wonderful. But if one or both parents are embodying and living a disconnected state that is different than the spoken message, and that is what's going to leave the impression on the child. There's a reason why there's a saying that says talk is cheap. And I know that saying is talk itself, therefore the saying is cheap if the saying is true. So I think all of us as bringers of life to children or setting examples to people around us, even if we don't have children, to me it's a wake-up call to be reminded. It's our embodied action that is the real teacher, not so much what we say.
Very well said.
So important.
Couldn't agree more.
Important.
So you've recently published your book, How to Be Ultra Spiritual, 12 and a half Steps to Spiritual
Superiority. I love it. I gotta say, I haven't finished the book yet, but what I've read so far is brilliant. It's got the voice of your ultra spiritual content for sure.
So what's the mission of this book? What did you want to do when you wrote this book? What's the message you wanted to deliver?
Yeah, a couple things. One of the intentions of the book is to entertain people, give people laughs. I don't think anybody's ever been to their doctor and their doctor says, you need to laugh less. It's harmful for your health, how playful you are. So giving people laughs and entertainment is certainly one intention. And then the deeper intentions is for the comedy to deliver messages of self-awareness, deliver messages where we're advocated to take a look at what has served us well in life that no longer serves us. So we can be challenged to let that go. Also the message of advocating that we become more unapologetically true to ourselves. And then if I were rounding that out, I would add one more to it. The intention is to help us wake up to how we're looking for happiness where it's not, so we can begin looking for happiness where it is, all while hopefully having some laughs and a good time.
It's such an in-depth book, and I can see how it's multifaceted, and it's not just the superficial, comedic air to it. It's so much more than that. I'm really looking forward to continuing. And I'm curious, what's one of your favorite topics or one of your favorite chapters inside your book that you've written?
Yeah, while I was writing it, it was fun how each, when I was working on a given chapter, that was my favorite chapter, which was like a great blessing. But now in hindsight, it might depend on my mood, but I think the plant medicine compulsion chapter is one that I registers pretty close as my favorite.
Tell us about it.
So yeah, the plant medicine compulsion chapter, the in the New Age culture, which I'm sure you guys are aware of, enlightenment through plant medicine is a very real component of the spiritual culture present day, and is there great beauty and potential there? Yes. And is there a shadow side my opinion, yes.
Yep.
And I think because the plant medicine pursuit of our culture is so new. It's so new to the Western mind that we're in a very immature phase of it. So because we're in a very immature phase of it, we, for the most part, are very unaware of the shadow side of it. We have a lot of naivety in how we approach it. So I've seen a lot of what I would call predatory shamanism, where there's psychological violations and sometimes sexual violations in the plant medicine community. And to me, it needs a light shined on it. A lot of people keep the shadow side a secret, either because, one, they're not aware of it, or two, when they see like really BS behavior, violating behavior happening, they don't speak out about it because they might trick themselves into saying, well, no, we were doing something sacred, therefore, like, you know, my interpretation of that being like a predatory behavior, I must be wrong because we were doing something sacred. So I think we need to realize any shaman, whether they're a real shaman or they're just someone who calls themselves a shaman, they are a human being, and all humans have human egos. So nonetheless, I'm really passionate about representing, you know, the people rather than having people potentially victimized by what's not being spoken about. And I do believe just because we're using something that we call sacred doesn't mean we're using it in a sacred way. In addition to the predatory aspects of it, I do believe there's also a lot of very addictive behavior that surrounds plant medicine use. And some would say, usually the ones who are very addicted to it would say, well, there's no addictive chemical properties to it. You can't get addicted to it. Well, yeah, same with gambling. And people are so addicted to gambling. There's no chemical addiction to gambling. It's all our psychological as well as endogenous chemical addiction that we create while we're using a substance or behavior, whether it's gambling or plant medicine. So I have a lot of respect for the power of it, the potential of it. My beautiful girlfriend does a lot of work with ayahuasca, and there is a shadow side that I think needs some checks and balances on. So I think because I feel so passionate about it, that's one of the reasons why the Plant Medicine Compulsion chapter is one of my favorites. And it was also fun to just sort of slice through and skewer some of the, what I would call the dogmas within the plant medicine community.
Well, I'm so glad that you brought that up because we spent some time in Iquitos, Peru, which is like the hub of people going, one of the hubs for people to go and do ayahuasca and some other plant medicines. And you can see people flocking there by the
dozens,
the boatloads, you know, of people just roaming the streets and trying to find a shaman and things like that. And it's a very real thing of what you're talking about and what you mentioned. And I think it's important for people to, one, if they're going to seek out this experience, to be very aware of both sides of the coin, that it's not all sunshine and flowers. And then not only the shadow side of the shamans, but also facing the deep shadow side of the self, because that is a very, very real thing and something that Sarah and I both have experienced with that realm.
You know, I think it's hard for some people to admit that something that they care so deeply about has a shadow side, and this extends not only to the plant medicine, you know, spiritual community, whatever you want to call it, but outwards as well. You know, you get so passionate about it that you don't want to see that maybe there's a danger or darkness, and I think that's unrealistic to assume that something that's light doesn't have a darkness, because what's the cliche saying? You can't have darkness without the light, or vice versa.
Welcome to the relative world. You're one of us. And I love what you said. And personally, I think a great sort of exercise of empowerment is when we take a look at what's most important to us, and even the things that have worked the best for us, and consider what is the shadow side. I think when we're blind to the shadow side, there's a decent chance we're consumed by it and it's maybe working against us. But when we can be aware of the shadow side, like, awesome. The chances of the shadow side working against us, I believe, become less when we're aware of it. But when we're unaware of it, it can be working and we have no awareness. And as Ram Dass once said, you can't get out of a jail that you don't know you're in. So I do believe every damn thing, whether we're an ayahuasca advocate, a Tony Robbins advocate, a reading advocate, meditation advocate, we all deserve to ask ourselves the question, what is the shadow side of this practice? And that doesn't mean we're discounting it and making it unimportant to us. No, I think it means we're becoming more respectful of it. We're seeing more of it. So I think we all deserve to ask ourselves those questions.
Sure, it's just like, confronting the shadow side of yourself. If you don't ask yourself the question, you're never going to dive deeper and uncover what is repressed, and you're never going to see how that's affecting you, in the conscious waking state. And it's so liberating once you're willing to kind of dive into that. And once again, it's uncomfortable, but how wonderful to know that you have control over your personal development in that sense, that you can choose the speed, you can choose the rate, how much you're willing to dive into. But I think that's a really interesting perspective. I'm excited to get to that chapter.
Well, you'll know you're in that chapter because I think it's the first page of the chapter. You'll see a picture of me with vomit all over my shirt. So you'll know you're there.
That's wonderful.
All too familiar with that.
So charming.
So what has been the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself while writing this book?
I think to surrender and rely on the creative inspiration that comes through me, like wherever that comes from. I would call it like a source greater than myself, but surrendering into that and realizing it's a deep well. It's maybe got infinite depth to it. So that was a big lesson. The writing of the book was a big rite of passage for me into this lesson, to be honest with you, a lesson of let the creativity come through me. There's an infinite well of it. My job is to be curious about what wants to be written rather than me having to think up what wants to be written. And given that, to me, the book was a win. It was beyond purposeful before anybody else read it. And even if like every copy of it was burned and digitally erased and nobody ever saw it, it would have totally been worth writing it because of the personal journey it took me on to write it. And one other lesson, which is a little bit synonymous, but it maybe deserves its own words, is follow my heart. Not my head. And boy, do I need constant reminders of that. But when the idea of the book project was put on the table, my heart said yes, and my mind was saying no. My mind was like, well, I don't know how. I can't write. I'm not a writer. I've never written anything. But my heart was saying, yep, this feels like a yes. So learning to trust my heart more and more, which is certainly a part of surrender, was another lesson. The idea there is realizing my heart never misleads me. It doesn't necessarily take me where I want to go, where I think I'm going to go, where I expect to go, but it always takes me to a very purposeful place, usually way more purposeful than what I could have imagined.
Speaking of surrender, have you read The Surrender Experiment?
I have not. I think I've heard that title, but who wrote that?
Michael, he wrote The Untethered Soul. I don't know if you've read that either.
Okay, that's why it's striking a chord of familiarity. But no, I haven't read either of those books, but I've definitely heard of them.
Yeah, they're both very, very good. And the Surrender Experiment really touches on the power of surrender and how just letting your life unfold according to the flow of the universe, so to say, and how that can really just enhance your life and just take you to places that you never thought were possible.
Very nice. That is a very scary concept to my ego, but very liberating to my heart for sure.
I think you'll definitely speak for many on that one.
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
So if our listeners are interested in connecting with you, where can they find you, JP?
Well, right now I'm on my girlfriend's porch in Costa Rica. So, crawl through the jungle, say hey. But unless you want to do that, social media is a great place. Facebook and YouTube, I'm always posting videos there. And then the other social media channels I'm on as well. But Awaken with JP is my handle for all my social media. So that's a great place, and I love to connect with people.
Great. So, you've provided a lot of really deep spiritual insight on this episode. I think people are going to be really happy to hear, the inner workings of JP, especially if they've only ever seen your ultra spiritual videos. But if you could provide our listeners with one last bit of wisdom, of any kind of words of advice for people who might be listening and might be a little, lost on this, new age spiritual movement. As you said, we're kind of new to this in this Western world, and because of that, we've reached a lot of naivete in various topics regarding it. What would be your last little bit of guidance or advice or words?
Yeah, it would be have beliefs, but don't believe your beliefs. I think certainty is very soothing for the ego. It makes us feel safe and in control, and it always misleads us. I think when we can have a curious mindset, it means, one, we're embracing uncertainty, which is kind of scary, but two, it allows us to go beyond the limits of our finite capacity to be certain about something. I think certainty has zero correlation to truth. It only has correlation with our need to feel safe and in control. So, and I think ourselves are the best landscape for the certainty versus curiosity practice. So if we can even take a look at who we think we are, and instead of being delusionally certain about it, can we become curious about who we really are? And let it be an open-ended question rather than a closed statement of certainty of a story about who we are. So I think we're all... none of us are as big as we think. I think we're bigger than we can think. So I think curiosity becomes, it makes us the student of our own life rather than the closed-minded, closed-minded something about our life.
I love that.
Yeah, man, it was a great time, and it was a pleasure talking to you. I really enjoyed this conversation a lot.
Oh, me too, Chris and Sarah. You guys are rock stars, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for coming on the show, JP.
For sure.
Another one in the books.
Could have kept going.
Yeah.
Could have kept going. Those campfire conversations.
I like the campfire conversations.
Me too.
You might want to consider changing the name of the podcast to Campfire Conversations.
Oh, what do you guys think about that? Send us an email. Let us know if you're on board.
Well, now that we're done with that conversation, we would like to talk about the health tip of the episode.
Ding, 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 ding.
As we mentioned in the intro, we said that we'd be talking about Go-To Cola. What the hell is Go-To Cola?
Say it 10 times fast. Go-To Cola, Go-To Cola, Go-To... I can't do it.
Now you got 3, right? Anyways, Go-To Cola is a fantastic herb for those looking to sharpen the mind. So you want to boost your memory. Do you want to...
enhance your meditation.
You want more mental clarity. Go-To Cola is your answer. Go-To Cola has been around for centuries and has been used all over the world. But something that I highly recommend using for those of you that want some power.
Ooh.
So, to talk a little bit more about what Go-To Cola does, Go-To Cola is very good at stimulating growth of new brain cells. So this is the number one reason why you have so many mental benefits from taking Go-To Cola.
And it protects the brain from toxins and oxidative stress.
Doesn't that sound nice?
It sounds wonderful.
It'll even help you sleep better.
You know that we all need that.
That's right. And it may help with Alzheimer's. I don't know how many studies have been done on that, but since it does enhance the mind, it will definitely help with other aspects. So, how to get Go-To Cola? See, this is the issue in the herbal world. Working in the herbal world, I'm very familiar with this. There's a lot of companies selling Go-To Cola, but how do we trust, X company versus Y company versus Z company? Which one is better? I know that's always a topic of concern. I know it's always an issue when you go into a health food store and you are overwhelmed. I know it can be quite difficult. Well. We only use a select group of herbs from certain companies, and one company that we are very fond of is Dr. Morris's herbs.
Morse.
Now, he has a health club. We have joined the health club, and we are working on becoming a wholesale for his herbal supplements, which are top-notch, top of the line. You really can't beat it. You can't get better than it.
Oh, you notice it too very quickly.
And this is a person that has spent a lot of money, and I won't go into how much, on supplements over the years.
He definitely went down the rabbit hole with the supplements. I had to say something at some point.
But it was necessary because I was able to test and try out different supplements, and I found out that a majority, if not, I would say about 98% of them, don't really work that well at all. And you have to remember, with herbal supplements, it takes time. It takes a good 30 to 60 days for you to really notice a difference. And if you really want to notice a difference, it's super important to be eating clean. That all plays a role, and that herbs and clean eating work in conjunction with each other. But with that being said, if you're interested in a brain tonic that has Go-To Cola in it and many other beneficial herbs, let me know, and I can see what I can do to work something out to get those for you. But in the meantime, any other questions, please reach out to us, and we would be happy to answer.
Absolutely. Thanks for sticking around with us, guys.
Take care.